And I'm like, oh shit, my plane is boarding in like 10 minutes. And I'm like, oh, excuse me, like, how long is this gonna take? And then I got an even more forceful, ma'am, this is serious. We don't care when your plane is boarding, and you should be taking this more seriously. You've already been arrested. And I was like, what? Am I arrested? Is this what's happening now? So now I'm going to actually tell you my poor decision story of a time that I really royally fucked up. It's January 2021, still the time of COVID where it was like sort of not great to be traveling. But my best friend, it was her 30th birthday, and her name is Rue, and so we went to Aruba for her birthday. And at the time, I had been going through some stuff, right? Like, it had been a really hard 6 months. COVID times just were hard. I had lost my job. I was starting my business. And this trip was really meant to be a time for me to take some rest and relaxation and really think about what is the life that I want to be living. And I did that. I can say the 10 days in Aruba are absolute, what I like to call best life. We snorkeled to a shipwreck. We ate fresh fish. I got to pee in the ocean every day. That was really great. But then, sadly, the vacation ended. And so I packed up all my bags. And I had many bags. I forgot how to pack for a trip. So I overpacked excessively. I drop off our rental car. And then I head to the airport to come home to San Francisco into this next chapter of my life. And the thing about Aruba is because there's so many American tourists, you actually do your customs in Aruba before you board the plane. So I get to customs, and I had global entry. And I get my passport out, and I type in all my information. And the kiosk is being a little wonky. It gives me a little weird alert. I go to the customs guy, and he starts asking me all of the normal customs questions, right? He's like, do you have any food? And I say, absolutely not. I absolutely did have some food on me, but you always say no to those questions, right? And then he asks, do you have any shells? And I say, absolutely not. But of course, I definitely did bring back some shells and some rocks with me as souvenirs. And so he takes my passport, and types on the computer, he sees something, he looks at me, he looks at my passport, looks at the computer, looks at me, passport, computer, and he says, okay, ma'am, you've been selected to have your bags checked by customs officers. Please go over and sit in that waiting area over there. And I'm like, okay, totally great. And in my head, I'm thinking, fuck. Because not only do I have food and shells, I also have a weed vape on me that I know is not at all well hidden, and they will 100% find. So I'm sitting in the little waiting area as my pulse starts racing, and I'm thinking back to the moment of this extremely poor decision. When I was in the restroom of the rental car place, when I remembered that I had this weed vape in my purse, and instead of throwing it out or not bringing it at all, I was like, oh, I didn't really smoke that much. There's still a lot left. I'm unemployed right now. I should save my money and not buy a new weed vape when I get home. So it'll be fine. I've traveled with weed before. No big deal. So I just take the weed vape and just stuff it in my suitcase. I have one of those clamshell, hard-sided suitcases. So I just stuff it in my suitcase and go on my merry way. Well, here I am, 30 minutes later, starting to sweat bullets. And so finally, the customs lady is like, okay, ma'am, it's time for me to go through your stuff. So I bring all of my bags. And I have an overflowing purse, a huge backpack that's bulging out with stuff, a duffel bag that is very precariously zippered shut, and a suitcase that I literally needed to sit on in order to zip her close. And she looks at all the stuff that she's now going to have to meticulously go through and is like, why do you have so much stuff? At which point I was like, I haven't traveled in a really long time. I forgot how to pack, and I'm trying to stay light and stay breezy, but I know that as soon as she gets to that suitcase, I'm fucked. So she starts to go through my purse. She starts to go through my backpack. She pulls out the 3 tarot decks that I brought with me. Mm-hmm. And I'm just trying to chit-chat, trying to stay cool, distract her, whatever. She gets to my duffel bag and she pulls out the inflatable pool noodles that I got off Amazon and many caftans and the like portable yoga mat. And she's like, did you really use all of this stuff? And I'm like, sort of. And I'm just embarrassed by the amount of stuff that I had actually brought with me on this trip. She gets to the suitcase. It's time. It's time for the suitcase. And she unzips it slowly, opens up the clamshell, and there is my weed babe for all to see. And my heart sinks, it drops, and she takes it, she like sort of looks at it, she looks at me, she looks at it, and she's like, is this a vape? Yes, this is vape. Is it oil? Yes, it's oil. Is it THC? And in that moment, I had the gall to potentially become an international drug smuggler, but I did not have the gall to lie to law enforcement. So I was truthful, and I said, yes, it's THC. And she sort of like rolls her eyes like this fucking woman and continues to like dig through my literal dirty laundry in my suitcase and find the shells that I had hidden in there. And she again rolls her eyes. And I'm just like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. What's going to happen next? And so at that point, I try to like explain myself. And I'm like, oh, I like live in California. I forgot that it was in my purse. And she's like, ma'am, you knew exactly what you were doing. Don't try to play me here. And I was like, okay, yeah. So I like be quiet and I step back. And they take the weed vape and they bring it into the back room where I can definitely see them laughing at me over how much shit that I had and the obvious like drugs that I had. I didn't even hide them well. And I'm like, oh shit, my plane is boarding in like 10 minutes. And I'm like, oh, excuse me, like how long is this gonna take? And then I got an even more forceful, ma'am, this is serious. We don't care when your plane is boarding, and you should be taking this more seriously. You've already been arrested. And I was like, what? Am I arrested? Is this what's happening now? Because I admitted that I had a THC vape, and they're like, no, you were pulled over and you had drugs in the car, and you've been arrested before. And I was like, I think I would remember that. That has never happened to me. And so then I was like, is there some other Elizabeth Morrison who has drug felonies? And that's why my passport got flagged at customs? And so I'm sitting there and I'm humiliated and I'm ashamed and I'm scared I'm about to get a felony and a huge fine. And finally they come back and they tell me, you know, you're lucky. We weren't able to ascertain how much THC was in this weed vape. And so we can't give you a felony or a fine. But we're going to put a note on your record and just don't do that again. That was stupid. And I was like, you're right. Will not do that again. And so I shove everything back into my suitcases as best as I can. And I run to my gate and I make my plane with like minutes to spare. I finally sit down on the plane and exhale for what feels like the first time in an hour. And it's at that moment that I have this like crashing realization that this was a real wake-up call for me in my relationship to weed. It started as like a fun habit, social, cool, like enjoying it. But it got to a place where I couldn't even imagine going to a vacation in this beautiful place on these beautiful beaches without having weed with me. And I didn't really smoke that much while I was there. And when I did, it did the opposite of what I wanted it to do. It disconnected me. It took me out of that present moment and put me into my crazy head. It made it hard for me to make eye contact with the people that I was with. And in that moment, I realized I needed to have a real heart-to-heart with myself about my relationship with weed. So I got home and I actually threw away all the weed in my house and I took a break for a couple of months. That was very helpful. But I did also get a letter in the mail a couple weeks later from the TSA telling me that I had lost my trusted traveler status. I had lost my Say Pre-Check privileges and my global entry. And so now every time I go to the airport and I'm taking my shoes off and getting my electronics out of my bag and waiting in that long line, I'm reminded of this rock bottom moment that helped me really take a long, hard look at something that I really needed to work on with myself. So it was a really stupid, poor decision on my part to travel internationally with weed. Don't do that. It's not a good idea. But it was something that really helped me move forward. So that is my poor decision story.